Hello fellow humans and welcome to the T57 Heavy texture review, because this thing is very interesting. Now I do know that in update 9.1 a lot of the 10s are going to be changed. We don't know yet if this one's going to be affected, so if you're watching this after, have a look at that as well, obviously. Because I do at least expect you to understand the concept of a calendar. So, we're now going to look at the T57 Heavy, and I also do expect you to hit the like button if you enjoy, and hit the dislike button if you don't enjoy, and don't forget to like and check out the links in the description. So now, we have the T57 Heavy here. Now, there are essentially two lines that you can take here. You can go from the Chaffee to the Sheridan. Now, I'm going to omit these from playing them and from the video, because obviously that then completely removes the point of ever making a Sheridan texture review, so we're going to leave that for there. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to still compare them, but I'm mainly going to focus on the T37 to the T57 Heavy. So, let's have a look at that. Let's take a look at the stats, and then let's have a look at the armor of one of the vehicles, because only one of them actually has any notable armor. So, now after that, we're going to go start at Tier 6, and we're going to work our way up to Tier 10. So we do start out with the T37, and first of all, we can see that the firepower stats are identical to the Chaffee, so you're not missing out on anything there. The Chaffee is slightly worse in other stats, like the mobility, but yeah, that's about everything. You know, the Chaffee is slower, the T37 is the better vehicle, so you need the Chaffee for the Sheridan, but the ideal thing you can do is, obviously, if you want the Sheridan and the T57 Heavy, then going the Chaffee to M41 to T49 way is obviously easier, so that definitely has to be kept in mind there. If you want both, if you only want the 50% Heavy, then the T37, T71 and T69 is probably the better option. So, to be honest, I would recommend you to go to the Chaffee route, because then you can just research both the 57 Heavy and the Sheridan. However, obviously, this being the T57 Heavy texture review, I will focus on those that directly lead to the T57 Heavy. So, with the T37 and the Chaffee, both don't have any armor. They're relatively similar, with the Chaffee being somewhat slower by 6% or even more in the effective horsepower to weight ratio, and there not being any different other than that. So basically, you're playing the same vehicle if you play these two tanks, with the Chaffee having some minor drawbacks. Now, with the M41 Walker Bulldog and the T71, there is quite a big difference here, because I mean, the M41 does have an autoloader as well, but I don't recommend using that under any circumstances, so just ignore that gun. So, 2,800 DPM versus 2,100. Then we have a very big difference. The penetration, 160, 168. It does look like a big difference, but in the battle, you're not going to have a very noticeable difference. Unless the penetration becomes like 15, 20, 25 millimeters, you're not really going to have a noticeable difference on the battlefield. So, therefore, it's about the same. But obviously, the M41's gun is a lot better in terms of DPM there. Now, the accuracy is the same, the dispersion is the same, the T71 has less gun depression, which does set them apart. Then in terms of mobility, the Bulldog is insanely fast, one of the highest power to weight ratio in the game, so that is very good. The T71 is not so much, so essentially the Walker Bulldog is the better vehicle here in this regard, where the T71 is a bit, I mean, it has an autoloader, but overall it's relatively disappointing. So there is that. Another reason why I would probably recommend going the Chaffee Bulldog T49 line rather than T71, but, you know, this is the original 57 Heavy, so we're going to go into these, and if you want to see the Sheridan texture review, then vote for it in the next community poll, because that's how we decided. And no, I'm not going to put tank destroyers in there, I don't like them. So, next we have Tier 8, and then we have the T49 with the T69, and obviously the T69 wins on naming alone, and it also wins in usability. While the T49 is very fun, with its 152mm gun, it's not very practical, so that obviously does drag it down quite a lot. And while it is a fun, very nice tank to play in terms of practicality, the T69 does win outright. Obviously, it's a medium tank compared to a light tank, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Obviously, the T49 is massively faster, has no armor whatsoever, whereas the T69 does have plenty. Well, plenty enough to occasionally get a bounce, because still, this is not a amazingly well-armored vehicle. Still, speaking of amazing, that's not what the T54 E1 is. This thing is a pile of donkey shit, roughly. Now, you do have a 3-shot autoloader, which is very nice. You have a very, very good aim time here, as you can see. Same as T69, so that is at least consistent here. You know, the accuracy aim time is essentially the same over the T69 and T54. You just bump up the penetration and the alpha damage. You don't have any HE on this vehicle, which is a bit why, but that's not great. Now, the problem with this vehicle is that it's not horrible. It's just overall, what is this even? You don't have any reasonable mobility. I mean, this is essentially heavy tank mobility at this point. And the armor, while being stronger, doesn't really exist. That also reflects it not doing that well. Now, obviously, the 57 Heavy is the crown jewel of this line at the end, and it has 3000 DPM, even with calibrated. That's the one thing I have to mention as well. If you are playing an autoloader, you're always going to use calibrated, no matter what tank it is. Every single autoloader, slap some calibrated on there. It is going to help you massively. An autoloader is there to burst, fire quickly, and get out, and you want to have as many of those shots pen as possible. So you want to get that calibrated, especially if it is an autoloader that has heat as a premium ammo, because obviously you get more penetration out of that. Now, 1,200 clip damage. As I said, that might change. This is the vehicle that should have gotten the 4 shells. You know, make this the heavy sit-down bunker monster, basically, and leave the 50B as the quick breakthrough one with a relatively smaller clip, but Wargaming decided against that. And the problem is a tank with a bigger clip is going to make people camp more, because when you're on 1,600 damage and you can get clipped, you're going to sit in place. You're not going to play aggressive because you can be clipped. But if the enemy only has a 900 clip, you're going to play aggressive because you can kill them. So bigger clips make the game more campy, which is not great. Now, the 57 Heavy does have a lot of that. Now, the mobility doesn't really exist compared to what we have at here. Obviously, it's a heavy tank. It's never going to be able to compete with something like this at the front. However, it is still solid in terms of usability, and it is definitely good enough to work it, which is always what you want, and the armor is the same. I think this is... I don't think it's as good as the Yaw, personally. I do not think that it is as good as the Yaw in the overall package. The gun, obviously, is better. Now let's have a look at the armor as well. Here we go, looking at the 57 Heavy's armor. Now, it's an American tank, which means side armor. What is that? We're not going to get shot on the side. Why do we need that? So, that's not there. So, that's unfortunate. And I do have a boat-shaped hull, which a lot of the American tanks do have, where it's like sort of bends upwards here, which does help a lot with the non-existent side armor. And at a certain angle, you won't be penned. However, obviously, for side scraping, it is not going to be relatively usable, because at that point, if you're trying to side scrape, you're going to get shot in your cheeks here. And it does look like it's storing some walnuts, but it is just storing tank shells. So, with 8 degrees of gun difference, that is plenty. You got a cupola, but that doesn't matter because these cheeks are weak. Well, it can be pretty strong because of the angles on it. So, essentially, the turret isn't very well armored, but it is well angled. So, if you keep this thing moving back and forth, not that fast though, then you can get quite a lot of bounces off it. Now, it's also an oscillating turret, as you can see, so you want to watch out for that, you know, because that can increase your armor angle and decrease it as well. Now, the front plate, you can't pen that. You can't pen this, kind of, but the angle is most likely going to make it bounce, so that is not a great place to shoot at. The lower plate is very, very small, but is very easy to pen. So if you hit it, that's a guaranteed penetration. So in terms of the armor, it has enough to make it viable, but not enough to make you actually play around the armor on the vehicle. But now, let's put that back a bit. Let's start at the bottom and work our way up. Armor. What is it? Well, it is what you need when you don't know how to play the game. Now, it can obviously be very helpful, but obviously the more you know, the better you are, the less armor you actually need to perform well, and that's the case here as well. This doesn't have any armor whatsoever, and you can get gargoyled if you do end up in a tier 5 battle. However, if you're fast enough, if you're good enough, you can just simply play around that, and or bounce off the screen, something like that. Now, obviously, if you have no armor, then that is like having no clothes in public. You're going to lose money, but in Blitz, you're going to lose your hit points. So, don't recommend doing either of those two things. But I do recommend checking out my Discord server. It's a very nice place. So, what we're going to do here, obviously, just, you know, basic knowledge at this point. Look for a target, shoot at the target, but go away from the target if they're aiming at you. That is how it works. That is a shot into the croup. Now I do know is firing a line, which means I'm going to go over here with the KV. Might be able to shoot me, but the croup can't. I can now. So, I'm gonna go for the SU. Go. And somehow they're capping. That means there's 2 capping, which means there's someone else in there, which I would assume to be either the Charles or the Type, because those are the unknown ones. And given that the other guy's back there, I would assume it to be both. Alright, that's... yeah, that's very... not how you do it, but anyway. There we go. Just go in. Go around them. I mean, you can essentially circle of death a medium with this. And the secret to getting good at the game is that there is no secret. You just have to know how the game works. Learn the tanks, learn the maps, reload, alpha damage, all that. If you know more you know, the better you're going to be. So, that is that simple. And now I'm going to get out of here because that guy's going to be pissed that I ruined his horrible plan of about 0.3 IQ to just go and try cap, which is about the worst thing you can do unless you're in a late game situation and hunting a light tank like this. There we go. That was a nice high roll. Very good. And now the SU, which can one-shot me, but that's not my problem. So, he's going to be camping back there, which means this is going to be a very boring end to the battle. But I think that's somewhat decent. It kind of shows how the game works, how the tank works. Just drive around, look for targets, shoot those targets while your teammates are distracted, do some extra damage, and boom, there you have it. So, it's a nice little tank. It is lovely to play. And it can be a good way on your road to the T57 Heavy. However, the linearity of this line doesn't exist whatsoever because this thing has nothing to do with the T57 Heavy in any way, shape, or form. So that is quite unfortunate, and unfortunately the next vehicle isn't going to be much better in that regard, is it either? And now we'll get to what happens when you shrink wash a T69, which is already a sized down version of the T4A1, so it's gonna be better from now on, but it's still not gonna be great. It does have an autoloader, so that's a great progression into it, but it is still a light tank, which obviously has nothing to do with a tank that is called a T57 Heavy. So it completely plays differently, and the same thing applies here. Skill is your best armor. The more you know about how the game works, the more you understand about how people play, or the more aggressively you YOLO and hope it works out, the better you're going to be at the game. Alright, now, at this point, there's no one going to be having any moves here, so that means I'm going to completely ignore that. Whether that ever happened, and I'm going to go down here and get some damage on this side. That is some freebie on the T43 here. There, nice clip. Now the clip is triple 160s, which is not great, but it is definitely good enough to make it a somewhat formidable enemy on the battlefield, so that ain't too bad. Well, Dicamax, rule number 1 of playing the Dicamax, tell the goddamn Dicamax. So, yeah, that's the only rule of that vehicle. So, let's try to go for the M6 here. Should be a very easy kill. Now, obviously, I got 1 shot left. It's kind of a waste to just trying to keep that, but I might as well just eat it in here. Or not. And then go back down and reload. Now, the M41 dropped, and this is a free win. That's cool. So, nothing really happened, but that's about as impressive as this vehicle is. It's not interesting. It's fine. It's playable. However, there's nothing really interesting about it. And I wouldn't really keep a tank like this in the garage. An M41 Bulldog is definitely more interesting at that point. Or an M41D, which you can get for free as well. And it's going to make you credits as well, so that's a bonus. So there we go. Now, 2k again, which is, that's acceptable, I'd say, at that point. There is no reason to play up, 5-6 battles to get 3k, 4k, because that's not realistic. And only showing those games is going to completely sway the picture of the tank into a light where it shouldn't be. Because, if you only show the 4K games, then every tank seems OP. But that's just not how it works. So, relatively average game for a relatively average tank. It plays like any other light tank. Just use your brain and don't get shot at. And now we go with the T60. Nice. Now, obviously, this is a medium tank with an autoloader. You have 225 alpha damage, I think. So you can do the math of what 3 shells of this equals. Put it in the comments, you know, check your math skills. You know, well, M41D player is so dumb. Anyway, that means now I'm alone here, and oh, the sphere is over there as well. That's fine then. Yeah, but that happens when you give out a tank for free to literally everyone. That's what happens. Anyway, you're not a tank destroyer, mate. Okay, but I can be because I do destroy tanks. There we go for the sphere. Don't want to overdo it though because there are annoying tanks in this game that are gonna want my meat. And hey, look, he's moving. That's the way to go. Very nice. Very, very nice. The glacier's throwing away. That's very cool. Gonna go for the HE, set of fire, stuff like that. If you can use HE, always use your HE because, you know, it does more module damage and it also does more regular damage. So, use HE if you can. There are very simple tips to get at least average at this game, and then everything else is a bonus of learning more about the games, the players, the maps, and so on. And also diving deep into depression of disappointment by the average player quality has absolutely tanked in the last couple of years, and that does come from, first of all, Wargaming wanting the player base to be garbage, and obviously the game going from mainly tank enthusiasts to, huh, what's a tank? So that is obviously not great, and that's why I'm doing this series, so that you can figure out how to play a tank and what not to play. Now, obviously, the T57 and the T71 are pretty hard to play. This one's not a great vehicle either, so you are going to need a bit of expertise with it. I do not recommend this tech tree at all. If you're a beginner, if you're not a good player, if you're not a good player, then I recommend you to go back to Tier 5 and learn to play. So, but, overall, I think this is a more of an advanced player's line, so I definitely keep that in mind as well. If you made it this far to the video, then thank you very much for doing that. Really appreciate it. And keep that in mind, that if you're not a good player, then stay away from it. Alrighty, and also stay away from cities. Don't go there. It's literally the easiest way to increase your win rate. Just stop going city. It is the easiest way to get better for free. Alrighty, now, 2 left. Scorpion's 1 shot. It's not going to bother me, though, because I don't need him. I'm going to get rid of the whatever, 8, 6, 7, I don't know. 7. The Romans. Ah, love them numbers. Alright, here we go. We're going to see if we can keep him alive, at least, because that would definitely be nice. I have the hit points. I can take a shot. Doesn't really matter. And he shoots heat at a tank that has no armor. That is cool. Love that. And there we go. Scorpion should be able to finish him off, which is good for him. Come on. Come on. Get him. Get him. Here you go. Not like that. Alright, here we go. Gotta do it myself then, as always. But yeah, that's a pretty decent game in the T69. And it kind of also shows how this thing works. It's about knowledge. It's about outplaying the enemy. It's about putting the vehicle in a position where you can use the clip to your advantage and where the enemy doesn't have a chance to fight back against it, and also put yourself into a position that you can retreat out of very easily, because then obviously you'll be protected while you reload. So here we go in the T54 E1, and it is time to get your puke bags ready, because that's about the experience you're going to have in this vehicle. Now, I don't know what it is about this tank, but it does attract a lot of absolutely horrible players, like the T55A does as well. I don't know why, but it's just been a thing that I've been noticing. But then again, the games has been attracting horrible players like those guys for a while. It's an ML1. It has gun depression, but you put it on flat ground because reasons. Now, Type 61, that tells me him running away. That tells me that the rest of his team's probably not going to be on that side either. Does track himself, which is very free. And now, going to take another shot into his cupola, and that is already the first 1,000 damage done. And now we do control the map, which is a great thing to have. Alright, we have map control, which means now if that WT would not throw away that badly, then it should relatively be easily in the bag. That's obviously the caveat to having map control. You also need to have a team that doesn't just completely throw away. And that should be obvious, though, at that point. Alright. So that I don't throw away, I'm going to peek up here, Borsig. You're going to do something about that. Would be very nice if you were. But obviously now I have a very long reload. This thing has no noticeable armor whatsoever, so that's obviously not great. And now let's have a look at those guys down there again. 777 HP. That is not a lucky number for me because I have lost 1,000 hit points, which is never a great thing, but... Well, that's the rest of them gone. Don't need those. There we go, 122 TM. Missed them as well. Now this tank is obviously overall very horrible. I mean, not as horrible as me, but it's not a great tank in any way, shape, or form. So now, unfortunately, I'm going to have to deal with the flanker of the T57 here, which is going to be the opposite of fun. But I guess if you can't aim, you lose. Congrats, you almost got me, but not just almost. Alrighty, 6 versus 6, and we do have the Borsig, myself on very low HP, and there is also SU-130 PM, which I can clip. So, don't have HE though, it's unfortunate. It's just something I never understand about this vehicle. Why does it not have HE? That does not make any sense whatsoever. Why did you bounce that? That is not... How? Mate, this is so easy for you. Literally gonna do that. What is this game even? What is this game? Seriously. Alright, now, obviously I don't have any hit points left at this point. It's not a great game. But, you know what? That was a good moment. Yeah, that was good. And nice. Got the map control. Easy. Very easy. Didn't do much damage though, so. Gonna have to find this clip again, god dang it. There we go, 2.6k. 2.7. It's gone now. I think that is gonna be solid enough for this vehicle. I really don't want to play it again. So, yeah. Like, even if you play it absolutely garbage like I just did. Guess I'll get more free damage, I guess, then. Unless he wakes up, but it's definitely a bot, so... Or like an AFK guy. It doesn't even have a camo, so... Probably not getting any more damage here, but this is a thing that annoys me kind of about stats. Like, you can literally just farm an AFK guy, and then you could be like, look at me, I did 3,000 damage, I'm a great player, even though you farmed an AFK guy. But so here we go with the T57 Heavy, the tier 10 of this line. So let's have a look. It's obviously Himmelsdorf, which is an absolutely abysmal map. What kind of like play on something nice like Canal or something? God dang it. Anyway, it's obviously going to the better side of the map here. It would be useful over there as well. The problem is, if you have mediums in the battle, you want to take out the mediums. Because if you take out the mediums, you take out the space takers and the space controllers. And if you then control the space, the more angles you have to fire from, the better you can do. So you want to get rid of the mediums if you can. Ideally, mediums are harder to play than heavies, which means if you have horrible medium tank players in the enemy team, they're going to be a lot easier to take out. So that's why I like playing mediums a lot more, because you can have a lot more impact if you know what you're doing. So now, obviously, the FV is dead. The FV 4005 is also dead, which now leaves the enemy team in a completely bad spot, as in they're getting YOLO'd in the face, and they're down by 2 people already. Okay, IS-7 comes over the field. I am not aware of the position of the grill. I do know where the 50B is, however, so I'm now going to be able to take a shot at this guy, and now sort of sit in the place here. I don't really care about the IS-7 shooting me in the back here. Hit points are there to be used, so if you have them, then there is no shame in using them for what you can. Just don't overuse them, because obviously when you have no hit points left, you can't shoot. So, at this point, guys, 7 is possibly going to push me. Now, this is what I talk about. He knows I have a clip damage of 1,200. Ideally, he does. Which means he knows that I can't clip him. However, if he were on less HP, I could clip him, which then would make me... Like, him pushing me a bad idea. So the bigger you make the clips, the bigger you make the alpha damage, the more campy you make the game, because the more careful people have to be of you and the more passive they're going to play around you. And the more passive you have to also be, because you have an ass-long reload that you can't hide. So, here we go. Going to be a relatively easy finish on the AMX-50B as well. And even though I didn't do that much, I still ended up at 4,200 damage, which is just easy. It's just insane how easy it is to rack up damage with this vehicle if you just put it in a mildly convenient position. Here we go. In the second battle, I'm going to play 2 with the Tier 10s now, because why not? So, I do think this is a tank that is great and is worth getting if you know what you're doing. Right? If you're a good player, this thing can pay off massively. However, if you're not, you're going to struggle with the line, and you're also going to struggle with this vehicle because you have to put it in the right position. The armor isn't great. The mobility isn't great either, but it does have an absolutely amazing gun, and that is what you have to do with this vehicle. You have to put the gun into spots that the gun can work in without, you know, getting yourself killed, because that's not effective. So, here we go. E100. I'm not going to pen him at that angle. You can absolutely forget that. But it just took him annoying a bit. Got nothing else to shoot at, so I might as well do it at that point. That's not going to pen its heat through shielded armor. That is not going to work. But I do it anyway, because, yeah, I might as well. So, here we go. Gonna reload now. And obviously, keep yourself in a safe position that you don't get yelled at. Now, the point is, if you are a very good player, you know that your teammates are probably worse than you. So at that point, ow. At that point, you can be like, you're gonna be my bitch now. But I just became the enemy's bitch by doing that. Now, the object is gonna shoot me through the holes there, which is not very ideal. And the E100 is also gonna take another shot at me, so I'm gonna have to wiggle out and be gone. 628 might take a shot. Object is going to push forward, which is definitely not great. Now I'm on low HP, but I did that on purpose, you know, to give myself a better challenge. Yeah, clearly. I can keep telling myself that, right? Alright, there we go. Another one. I get completely ignored, which is definitely something you shouldn't do to a vehicle like this. Because then, you're gonna get gotten. That's not helpful. There we go. And he's gone. And now the 200 LT. There we go. 2.3k damage. It's just... yeah, workable. So, let's see. Ideally want some Super Conqueror action, but that's probably not going to happen. Obviously, he's aiming at me. Not going to have a fun time with him. 274mm heat penetration is more than enough to penetrate that vehicle. So, that is definitely, as you can see, a very good idea to play this tank against the 268 version 4. Now, the 268 version 4 is OP. No, it's not. It is not OP. As you can pen it with this thing relatively easily. Alrighty. Now, E100 and Object. They're both gonna try to get me, obviously, because I'm a very easy target at that point. Very easy to pen. Low HP, so can be killed. But, overall, let's have another look. He bounces. The armor isn't great, but it is definitely acceptable in certain degrees. And even though this is a relatively bad game from my side, it is still around 4,000 damage. So, you can really see how you can rack up damage with this thing if you just put it into an optimal position. I mean, I played like a complete donkey. You know, just peeked out in front of a couple of enemies, got punished, but I still did 4k damage. So, this kind of just illustrates that it's not the tank. It's 90% of the time it is the player. And for this vehicle, you need to be a good player to pull it off. It plays around the gun. It plays around your skill. If you don't have any of that, it is not going to work. So I would recommend you to get the M60 first. Obviously, the ideal way to position this vehicle is like I've done there. Have your teammates distract the enemies and then come in from the side, cause damage, pull away again. That way you can make this vehicle the most effective that you can. And a lot of other vehicles are the most effective that way as well. So with that said, hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching. And see you for the next one. Goodbye.